Hi, this is Chris with Orange Coast College's Art Department, reviewing color blends in watercolor, both wet and dry. So to start out, I'm going to draw a couple rectangles on the left side of my page here, and then a bigger square on the right side. And then I'm going to do color blend through two glazing gradations. So first I'm starting off with some purple, and I'm slowly watering it down as I go down the space until it gets clear at the bottom of my shape. And one thing you'll notice is that I used a lot of pigment on my first batch and then didn't match it very well as I got less and less pigment, and so I got a bit of a band there. It's a little bit better on this second one with the blue. So while these first two dry completely, I'm going to do a wet blend on paper. And I'm going to do a little blue and purple and cool red. So here I am mixing my paint, and then I'm going to lay out large areas of really saturated paint with the paper getting pretty wet so that they should blend well. You can kind of see the shine as I go. I think I got too much blue initially, and it's a little too dark. Probably should have used a little bit more water, and I think that would have blended a little bit better in the end. So now that the paint has dried on those gradations, I'm going to come back and reverse a gradation glaze over the top. So same idea, heavy with the pigment at first, and then add water to your mix as you go, watering it until the last strokes are clear water. You can see here, as with the original blue, I did a much better job with the yellow. And unfortunately, when I add the red, I make the same mistake, which is adding too much water on that second batch of pigment, so that the difference between the first batch of paint and the second is way too much water. So I need to do a better transition as with the blue and yellow. So here I just drew out some circles, and I'm going to wet blend them on the paper. So I'm going to paint in from the edge, leaving it nice and wet, and then with the second color just touch that wet edge of the first color. And I'm going to do 4 circles just using some of the paint that I've already got pre-mixed in my palette, just to experiment and see how the wet blend works. For big spaces, it's harder to predict, as you can see with the square that we did, but the smaller shapes, it's a little bit more controllable. And now lastly, I just want to do what we call a color mingle, where we're not really filling shapes. I'm just sort of trying paint out and adding a third color and letting them all mix in the center. And this is really where the magic of watercolor happens. So wet blending on paper and letting the paint flow. I think it works best when your paint is having roughly the same amount of pigment, so one of them isn't containing much more water than the other ones. And that way they'll push back against each other. Here you can see all of them now that they're dry. And you can see there's some nice blends going on. Often you'll get one running too fast into the other, and as I noted, that's often because there's a lot more water in that blend, or the first batch is dried into the paper a little bit more. But when you can work fast and keep the paint at about the same density, they'll flow into each other in a little bit more predictable fashion, and you should get really interesting results, if not happy accidents. All right, now it's your turn. All right, now it's your turn. Let's do an exercise where we lay this out as shown. So 2 areas to do gradation glazing, one for big multicolor wet blend, a few circles, and then a few tricolor mingles. Good luck.